Hello, and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches from around the nation that are making the big time where they are at. Before we get to the episode, we'd like to thank our sponsors that make this podcast possible. This episode is brought to you by Plyomat. The Plyomat is a multi-faceted jump testing mat that allows you to instantly receive ground contact times, jump height, and reactive strength measurements. One thing that is unique about the Plyomat is that it allows you to connect not just one, but multiple mats together for use in multi-hurdle hops and bounds, which not only gives it testing value, but also high value in training sessions with instant feedback on athlete reactivity. It is easy to use, accurate, and affordable. To check out the Plyomat and see what it can do for your training, head to plyomat.net. That's plyomat.net. This episode is also brought to you by Powerlift. Taking your athletic facility from concept to completion can be a challenge. It is Powerlift's goal to make the process as seamless as possible from start to finish. Their weight equipment is made from the toughest materials that can withstand excessive use from coaches and athletes for years to come. It's sought after for its unique design, customizable appearance, affordability, and superior warranty that training facilities deserve. Powerlift helps design weight rooms with the athlete in mind, and they pride themselves on their ability to outfit athletic facilities based on a team's unique goals. That's why high schools, universities, professional sports teams, and athletic performance facilities around the world have chosen Powerlift to help maximize their strength training goals. Call Powerlift today to be contacted with a rep in your area and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see for yourself why our clients are Powerlift proud. Finally, this episode is also brought to you by Vitruve. Vitruve is a velocity-based training system designed for colleges and high schools around the world. It is accurate, reliable, and affordable. The software is quick and easy to set up and use with a whole room of athletes simultaneously. Coaches have chosen Vitruve because it simplifies VBT and allows them to seamlessly integrate it on a daily basis. Check out Vitruve now for your school's free demo unit. Now, let's get to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. Today, I'm going to go through what we use for our leadership development in our Mustang Strength and Speed classes at Mount Vernon High School. I believe that leadership development is a must, not just for athletics, not just for school culture, but just to help set a foundation for life. And like at the very, very top of everything that we do in Mustang Strength and Speed, our overall goal is lifetime wellness. And when we think about wellness, it's not just the physical wellness that we're gaining from a high quality physical education, but we're also getting the really huge benefits of what it looks like to have mental wellness too. So that's something that we talk about, well, actually a lot, but really what it comes down to is we believe that it's really important to be able to lead yourself well before you lead others well. And most of the time, if you're leading yourself well, out of the overflow, you'll be able to make a bigger impact on the people around you. So when we talk about leadership development within our class, we center around like main topic ideas. And I used to play like a lot of videos or short clips or be able to have that for stimulating discussion. But through just conversations with our kids, we do like a lot of, I just go and ask each one of the kids, their thoughts on the program, and we try to get feedback. Coach Whitman, he tries to ask as many questions as possible, and he gets feedback from his classes too. And we just really try to figure out like what is landing for our kids and what is the best way to get the information across. And I used to think that playing a video actually was helpful. And now what we found is that if we introduce the topic and share a little bit about maybe a personal experience or a story, people are still captivated by somebody in person speaking. And it's just something to think about, when you're doing your stuff. It's like, yes, you could go find a leadership curriculum and you could play their videos. But what I think a better route would possibly be is for you to watch the videos yourself. You think through the experiences that you have and you make it personal to you so that it's actually more impactful for the kids that are in the room when you're talking to them. So what we do is we just have a framework and we say lifetime wellness is important. Being able to lead yourself well is great because out of the overflow, we'll be able to lead others well. And the thing is every single person is a leader. like we said, we need to lead ourselves well. So first of all, there's that leadership principle, but there's also this idea that, no matter your role, you need to be able to lead in it. And then obviously as you get older, as a student gets older, they will need to be able to lead their home well. They'll need to lead their kids well. Maybe they want to lead at their work in a bigger capacity. So just going through these principles is a big deal for us. And these are the things that we talk about over and over and over. Sometimes I imagine the kids would be like, maybe this is a little bit too much. And then I have conversations with them and to actually see, and they're like, no, this is actually really good. And here's why I believe it's really good is because we share our experiences and kind of frame up the topic, and then they get to have discussion with it. Small group discussion. They get to talk with their partners, their rack mates, their friends within the class, and they get to dive deep into these conversations that in a lot of classes they're not having. On their sport teams, they might not even be having. So it's just an opportunity for them to connect with their teammates or classmates or rack mates or whatever in a way that actually is talking about things that matter. And not to say that other things don't matter, but man, you can really dive deep into the things that will drive a culture forward. So these are the guiding principles. I'm going to go through like our vision, our mission, our core values, and a lot of this stuff I've learned from some awesome people, people that have been on this podcast. So like Joe Quinlan, my dad, Gage Rozier. I think there is a healthy amount from Gary Schofield. When he was talking through just the fruits of the Spirit and how that made so much sense of how he incorporated that back when he was at Greater Atlanta Christian. And then there's also been just like some iterations that I'll take a piece from like John Gordon or Tim Kite or Brian Kite, and we just kind of merge it all together. Because once you have the framework set, then it's like you start to learn something and you're like, oh yeah, I can plug that in. So like take some of Jocko Willink's stuff and take some of Angela Duckworth's grit stuff. And you just dive deeper and deeper into what this looks like. And, like you find a book and you read through it and you're like, oh man, that totally and completely hits here. So it's once you set that framework, I believe the conversations that you can have flow out of it become fairly natural. So just to recap before we dive into the actual stuff, I think that if you are going to do a leadership curriculum with your kids, it might be the most impactful to be able to discuss a little bit of your background with it, or maybe an experience that you've had. Frame it up, meaning like talk through what the idea is and how it corresponds to that story, because kids just connect to stories so much. It's just relatable, right? And then being able to go around and have discussion with kids. So get them in small groups and frame up a guiding question and let them work through that, and then share with the large group. Like have a couple of groups that want to share out. And I think it's valuable. I think it's people thinking about the things that they're thinking about, right? Like our thought process matters, and it's one of the things that one of our coaches says at Mount Vernon is the person that talks to you the most is yourself. And if the things that yourself is talking to you, if they're not good, if they're not stuff that's going to build you up, it's going to be really hard to be successful. So, all right, so we're going to dive into our vision, and this vision is just my guiding principle. It's actually my purpose statement. It's the thing that I'm trying to do every day at my job, and it makes the sets, the reps, the scheme of strength and conditioning way more exciting. Like I like the X's and O's of strength and conditioning. What I actually like is people. I like working with our kids and trying to get the best out of them. So this is the guiding. It's to empower students to pursue excellence, lead with courage, and positively impact the world. And that took me a long time to get to this point. It was actually back in college when I took a class with Wes Simmons at Northwest Missouri State, where we went through a class of three-dimensional coaching. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, our athletic director, Matt Tatey, had our whole athletic staff go through the three-dimensional coaching framework / course. And it was just really good. It was really good content. It was really good stuff, but it really helped me think through, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my overarching goal? And I've heard people talk about the vision as something that is going to inspire you to do the work that you're doing, but you might not ever see the fruits of your labor. It's something like that. It's so far out there, and you probably won't ever be able to attain it. But more so, it's the fight. It's the pursuance of that. It's the pursuit of trying to reach toward this vision. So one more time: to empower students to pursue excellence, lead with courage, and positively impact the world. And I don't really know if that's going to end up landing. I don't know if each one of the students that I get to have will end up doing that or not, but that's my goal. Like, that's my overarching goal for myself. And like we talk about in class, like, we have an overarching goal for the kids where it's lifetime wellness, but the thing that drives me is that vision. And then the mission that I'm on is to joyfully pursue the best version of myself through thoughtful action. And I actually, that one specifically, I learned from another podcast episode where it was a strength coach that he was from Iowa. He was at Iowa high school at the moment, or when I interviewed him, but he actually is at Arkansas State now. And man, just like, if you go back and listen to that episode, just so awesome. The amount of time and effort he spent on just diving into the principles of what he wanted for his program. And it's wild to me that such a high level coach was at such a small school and doing such awesome things with his kids. And it was just one of those things where he was in between one job and going to the next. But man, did he make a big difference while he was there. And I forgot. Sorry. That's Jeff Jones, who's now at Arkansas State. But he was just talking about joyfully pursuing whatever you're after. So I think that's a heart set. The core values that we try to instill for our kids are attitude, effort, and discipline. And when we actually do our standards for our grading, that's standard number one. Standard number one, the header, is commitment. And then the targets that we try to hit are attitude, effort, and discipline. And under each one of those core values, we actually have 3 supporting frameworks or structures that help us to figure out what does each one of those words mean. And that's actually what the majority of this show is going to be about, is each one of those things. I'll try to do a brief overview, and then you can just take it wherever you want to and build out your own. And I'm still looking at my last one, discipline, and how I want to make it better, because I'm not sure it gives the full depiction of what we're looking for. But you have to realize that this attitude, effort, and discipline fits within a bigger system or equation. So everything that we talk about and Mustang Strength and Speed uses the framework of E plus R equals O. And I actually first learned it from John Gordon in his book, The Energy Bus, but he used E plus P equals O. It was events plus perspective equals outcomes. And what his thought process with that was that your mindset or the way that you think about things actually is going to be a huge determining factor in the outcomes that you have. I like response better, that like Tim Kite and Brian Kite use, because it shows the thought process and the actual work that's done to pursue the outcome that you're searching for. So if you haven't heard of E plus R equals O, I would definitely recommend looking into Tim Kite's stuff and Brian Kite's stuff. They used to work together. Now they kind of do their separate thing. Tim Kite is actually fighting cancer right now. He's in the last little bit of his life, and the dude has fought hard, and he's shown what it looks like to have a great R, a great response, despite having a really, really crappy circumstance or event. And I think that's what we're all called to do. And when we see the framework of R, they talk about it as the R factor. They said the only thing that's in our control is our response. So if you think about an event or a circumstance or a situation in your life, oftentimes It's one of those things that it happens to you, right? It's not something that you created. It's just one of those things, right? I just had a friend that got hit. He was in a car accident on Wednesday, right? Like, number of factors go into it. I'm not sure all the details, but it was an event in that moment, right? It was a circumstance that he had to deal with. And in that moment, he had choices that he had to make, things that he had to do as a response. So the event plus the response equals the outcome. And just talking with him a little bit afterwards, he said, I just want to make sure that the other person's okay. Like that's what I'm worried about. So like his mindset, his attitude, the way he was thinking about it was selfless in that moment. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about actually. But he was thinking about another person, not himself. And actually work out with him. And on Friday he goes, man, I'm still just so sore from the accident. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it in today. And so one of those things where it's like, in the moment, he was probably hurting. He was probably aching. But his mindset, his attitude, his response that he was having wasn't about himself. And not to say that we have to put ourselves completely to the side, but more so what we're saying is the way that we think about things and the way that we interact with others matter. So in this E plus R equals O framework, we know that all of our power actually lies in the response. So an event, although sometimes we can influence events, oftentimes it is outside of our control. And what's in our control is the way that we respond to that event. And because of a high quality response, we have an opportunity to impact or affect the outcome, knowing that we don't have complete control over that either. So like, let's say it's a basketball situation. Like, you can watch as much film as you can get as many shots up as possible. You can have the best practice sessions in the world. But when it really comes down to it, when you get to the game, things are still going to have to align. There's still another team on the floor. There's still 9 other players that are playing the game. So there's a lot of other factors that are not in your control that impact the outcome. But that doesn't mean that you can't do everything in your power to have the best response that you possibly have. So that's where we're going to spend all of the time that we have talking about leadership is in this response, because that's where our power lies. It's good to understand events. It's good to be able to see how outcomes are playing out so that we can readjust our response. But what it really comes down to is the time and the effort that we're going to place on leadership development or how we interact with the world has to be with the things that are within our control. So the things that we say are the R factor. The big deal for us is AED. And I actually got that thought process from Nick DeMarco at Elon. He uses this same, or he used, I'm not sure if he still does, attitude, effort, and discipline. And I believe those are the things that we can control. So let's dive into this. The mindset that one possesses and engages the world with is attitude. So actually, the word that is synonymous with attitude is mindset. What we're saying here is the way that you think about the world and you engage the world with is going to be a huge determining factor in your response. So that's A in AED. Okay. And then effort is the quality of work that one is willing to engage in to accomplish a task. So basically, if the way that we think about it is our attitude, the way that we actually do the work is the effort. And both of those oftentimes go hand in hand, right? Like if you want to have the best efforts, you need to have the right mindset. And if you want to feed having a good mindset, we got to keep on working hard, right? So like those make sense and they tie together really well. And then the last one, discipline. This is just like me getting a little bit of play on words here, but the choice to apply specific standards to achieve meaningful objectives is the discipline. So it's a choice to apply something that you have decided is going to be a standard within your life. And what we're saying, in other words, is the means by which one accomplishes attitude and effort. So if you don't have discipline, it's going to be really hard to have good attitude or a good mindset. And it's going to be really hard to give good effort, especially when it's hard. Right? But if we have defined a standard that we're going to live by, then what it comes down to, we can gauge our discipline based off of that if we uphold that standard. So if we say we are going to live a particular way, whatever that is, you choose the standard, the quality of which we do that is what our discipline actually is. And one of the things that Brian Kite talks about is discipline is the elite level way to work rather than being guided by motivation. So motivation is fleeting. It is subject to change based off of the way that we feel. And what we're saying is feelings help us to understand our environment or to drive us forward in some ways. But really what it comes down to is they are so variable that we want something that's a little bit more firm. And when we say that we're going to be guided by our principles or our standards, and we're going to adhere to those by our discipline, we would rather take discipline over motivation. So if you think about it this way, motivation is fleeting, discipline is here to stay. We are looking for ways that we can build our discipline up. Okay, this is where I get a little bit cheesy, and this probably comes from my dad a little bit, but attitude, effort, and discipline, if I can talk, is AED. So when we talk about AED, something that people think about, or I hope they think about, is a defibrillator. So when we think about a defibrillator, it's the idea of being able to kickstart your heart. And I want our kids, when they think attitude, effort, discipline, I want them to think about, man, how is this kickstarting my heart? What does this look like for my mindset, my work ethic, and my heart set? Like where's my heart at? And so this attitude, this effort, this discipline that plays into our R factor, how we're going to operate within the world of E plus R equals O, we just want to make sure that we're really good at it. And I can tell you about attitude, and I can tell you about effort, and I can tell you about discipline. But somewhere along the way, kids are going to have to make the choice to do it on their own, right? Like we can talk about all these leadership principles, but what we talk about often is, man, the rubber's going to meet the road somewhere. What are you going to stand for? How do you want to be remembered? What does it look like for your character to be the way that you want it to be, right? Like this is bigger than yourself. It's more so like, how can you drive the people in your life to be better? How can you be better? Like it just changes that perspective. So if we dive into each one of those core values, what we're trying to do is define what is a good A, or what is a good E, or what is a good D for the attitude, effort, discipline. So defining attitude, we talk about growth mindset first. So Carol Dweck wrote an amazing book called Mindset. It's got a subtitle with it too, but it really is this idea of what does it look like to have a mindset that allows us to grow in every situation, despite setbacks, despite maybe this ever-present idea of, oh man, what if I fail? Because what happens is so many people, they get caught up in the idea, let's say it like that, the idea that if I fail, it's fatal, right? So the opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset. And everybody's heard this before. Most strength coaches, they understand growth mindset and fixed mindset, but we're educating our student athletes, our kids that are in our class, of what does it look like to truly have a growth mindset? And will we always have a growth mindset in every situation? Absolutely not. So can we identify when we are having a fixed mindset, and what are the steps that we can take to make sure that we can change the way that we're looking at something for the better? So it's really important for our kids to see this as kind of foundational for our attitude. If we're constantly in a fixed mindset, then it's going to be really, really hard for us to grow or change or get better if you're going to be set in your ways mentally, right? And then the second one that we talk about, and most of this one comes from The Energy Bus by John Gordon, is just having a positive mindset, having a positive attitude. So first one was growth, second one was positive. And when we see hard things in our life and we're positive about it, it is not because we believe that everything's going to be rainbows and sunshine. What we're saying is we're being positive because we know that having a negative mindset is only going to make things worse. And positive mindset will actually help us have the best response that we can in that moment. So I really want each one of our student athletes to be able to see
what something is for what it is, right? You don't even have to, it is what it is oftentimes what you'll hear people say. But then we want to make the most out of that situation and know that the best is yet to come. So if you haven't read John Gordon's The Energy Bus, it's a super simple read, but it's got a really, really nice impact. And we took the time, I read it to our Fundamentals of Athletic Performance class over the course of this semester. And man, the discussions that we have that come from this really simple story is so helpful. It's so helpful for me to make sure that I'm calibrated the way I need to be calibrated, but it's so helpful for our kids to see that, like, man, there are so many hard things in life. And if we have the wrong approach, if we have the wrong mindset, it's only going to be harder. So that's the second one for attitude, is positive. And then our last one is resilient. And when we talk about being resilient, what we're really looking at is we want to be able to bounce back from failures. So we want a growth mindset, we want a positive mindset or attitude, and we want a resilient attitude. We want to be able to have setbacks and know that they're for our growth. We want to know that bounce back ability is going to be one of the number one traits of the people that are the highest success rates of whatever, whatever arena you're talking about. It's going to be that. So the people that struggle the most but fight the most are going to be the ones that end up being successful. And that's just something we want to build up in our kids. So those are the three subcategories of attitude that help us define what a good attitude actually looks like. The next core value, effort, we have three more subcategories that help us define what good effort is. So the first one is a selfless effort. I recently heard somebody say that this is probably the worst way to describe this, but I'm still going to do it, and then I'll double back. So servant-hearted leadership by empowering others to be their best. So that's what we want, is we want people to be selfless. Now, the thing is the person I was listening to, they talked about servant-hearted leadership or servant leadership in general as like almost a misnomer. Like, you shouldn't ever have to say servant in front of leadership, because that's what a leader should be doing. They should be serving. The way that you lead matters. And if you lead from the back with a whip and you keep driving people forward, that is a really, really rough way to go. Like John Wooden, he talks about, I'd rather be in front with a banner saying, hey, everybody come with me. I'm going to help us on our mission, rather than be from the back with a whip. And when we think about, maybe the situations that we're in within sports or the weight room or training session in general, it's a good reminder for us too of what does this look like for us to be a selfless leader, right? Even if that is redundant. And the idea is we is greater than me. So that's the effort that we want from our kids, that they're going to put others before themselves, because they know that a group is so much stronger than one. And that teamwork, just because it's cliche, but we say it all the time, it's what makes the dream work. So selfless is our number one subcategory for effort. Then the next one is detailed, and we hit on this a ton. And I know there's so much pushback within the strength and conditioning world of how you do anything is how you do everything. Like, a lot of people think that's the dumbest thing ever. I know that there's a reason why they push back against it. I'm not blind to it. I understand what they're saying. I wholeheartedly get it. What I also know is that small things add up to be big things. And I know that if you waver in small things, then over time you're going to waver in big things. And if you can't be trusted in small things, it's hard to be trusted in big things. And really, it's a principle that I think is timeless. And when somebody says how you do anything is how you do everything, all they're saying is little things matter. They do. And how you interact with people, it matters. And how you go about the jobs that you have, it matters. And I think I heard somebody talk about I'm not going to unload the dishwasher or load the dishwasher in the same way that I train my kids. That was an example that they used. And like in my mind, I get what they're saying, but then again, like when I'm teaching my son how to load the dishwasher and how to unload it, we're very detailed and we make sure that we do it right. And when I'm doing it, I try to do it the best that I can. I get it. I truly get it. And I know I'm hitting this point really hard, but man, isn't it such a big deal for our kids to be able to win the details, to do the little things right? Because if we're going to say it's a game of inches, it doesn't have to be football or any given Sunday. I'm talking any sport. If it's a game of inches or small things and how we do those things matter, then we really have to be able to live that out or have some guiding principles in that way when we're training up kids. So there we go. Detailed is my second one. And then the last one is relentless. So this never quit, find a way, or make one type of mentality. It's something like what we use for this is break the rock. And it was actually University of Iowa football used that saying for a long time, especially in the early 2000s. And my dad, he just really related with it. And he was my head football coach. And it talked about like this stone cutter that was hammering away at a rock and would hammer like 99 times and would not see a crack in it, not even a hairline crack in it. But then on the 100th blow, the rock would split in two. And the stone cutter knew it wasn't the last one that truly broke the rock in half. It was the 99 that went before it. Meaning like those small things adding up, like we talked about in the attention to detail type stuff. It also is like the relentless, never stop, waves on a shore, keep on crashing type of mentality. And having that type of work ethic matters. And it matters to be able to teach that to our kids, because oftentimes, like within today's culture, we want things now, we want it fast, we want to be the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, whatever, the goal is. We want it in the most efficient way possible, obviously, but sometimes we forget that there are steps to get there. So having that relentless effort is super beneficial when we're trying to lead ourselves well. And then we move into, that's like the three subcategories for effort of like, what is good effort? And then the last category, and then we'll wrap up the show, is the three subcategories underneath discipline. So what does it take to have good discipline? And this is where I want to maybe modify this. So if you all have good ideas or you want to reach out and tell me what you use, I'm all ears, because I think I'm a little bit redundant here. And here's the first one, and you can see why it's redundant. So I have grit and discipline, and I see it very similar as resilient. That we talked about in attitude. And that's why I think there might be a little bit too much overlap. I need to find maybe a different way to define discipline. But grit, just like defined as Angela Duckworth says in her book, passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It's this idea of determination. The grittiest people in your life, and I guarantee you, you look up to them. They're the people that they don't burn out. They have this fire burning in them to make a difference, to do a good job, to have this idea of like, well done, way to be faithful, way to serve, right? And that's what we want to see within our kids, and we want to be able to try to build those up, and we do that oftentimes by showing stories. One of the ones that I love to show in this one, we don't use videos a ton, but every once in a while we'll show like a clip. And there's a race by Heather Dorniden in the Big Ten Indoor Championships from probably like 10 years ago, maybe more. But she's a runner for Minnesota, and she falls down in the 600 meter, and she actually gets back up, ends up winning the race, right? And it's this, even though it was a short-term goal, it was really, really, really cool to see her perseverance in that moment. And you can't tell me that it wasn't long-term in the way that she had trained her whole life, and the way that maybe her coaches or her parents or her teachers had built her up to say, like, never quit. Like if you would have fallen down in that moment, you have to ask yourself, like, would I have gotten up and given everything I had like she did? Or would I have just gotten up and finished the race, kind of jogging, and everybody kind of clapped their hands and they know, she didn't have to work that hard. We totally get it, but there's this whole level that she went up, of like, you know what? I'm not just gonna roll over. I'm not just gonna die at this moment. I'm gonna give everything I have. She had that resilient bounce back ability that we talked about earlier, and it was just super gritty. So I think that is what we're shooting for in this discipline. This way that we want to be able to adhere to a standard, and one of her standards was she was going to finish strong, right? The second subcategory that we have in discipline is ownership. And as you can probably guess, I get most of my thought process from Jocko Willink, from his book, Extreme Ownership, and then The Dichotomy of Leadership, his second book. And really, it's this ability to own and be responsible for your actions. It's when a coach talks about like accountability, that's what we're shooting for. Is we want kids that can see that, even if they don't see it as their fault or whatever it is, that they can take ownership, even in a situation that maybe they at first didn't think that they needed to take ownership in. Especially if we say that a player-led team is the best team. When we have players that want to lead out in a positive way, they see it as, man, this is our team. We got to figure out a way to make this better. Or this is our strength and speed session. We got to figure out how to make this better. So sometimes it's easy just to tell the story that Jocko uses as his centerpiece of what it looks like to take ownership. So if you don't know that story, I'd definitely take a look at Extreme Ownership. You could even watch his TED Talk. It's like 13 or 14 minutes. It'll give you a really nice overview of what I'm talking about here. And then the last one, I do believe that I think ownership and this last one are really good here. I just got to figure out if I want grit in this spot. But the last one that we have is courage. And courage is the ability to make the right decision even though it's hard. And another way that we talk about it is like strength of heart. And I learned this from Tim Kite. When we talk about strength of heart, we're talking about how can we build people up. So courage is strength of heart, and in courage is putting strength of heart into someone else, right? And when we have the discipline to have the strength of heart, to make the right decision, even when it's hard, I feel like that is a good place for us to be. So with all of this said, like attitude, effort, discipline, and all the rambling that I just did, what does it look like for us to actually implement this with kids? And what we try to do is we try to go 1 week where it is leadership development, and then the next week where it's nutrition. And we just go back and forth between those topics. Okay. So, we have a nutrition framework that we use also. We have this leadership development framework that we use. And what we're trying to do is just have regular conversations about both. Because I think in a team setting, that culture / leadership / just the way that a team connects is the X factor. And then I think personally, being able to lead yourself well, obviously, is where that's going to happen. And then nutritionally, I also think like if you're trying to get the best physical capabilities out of someone, that's going to be an X factor too. So it's like two separate arenas, but both of those I think are highly important and should be talked about, on a regular basis. So I apologize for the rambling. I think the structure might be there for you to be able to like take that and think through it and make your own. If you want some clarification on anything that I said or how I go about it, or if you just have feedback for me of how you would structure it a little bit better, I think that would be awesome to share because I'm struggling through just a couple in there, but I still think no matter what, they're quality things for us to be teaching. And I think it is something that I know it is something that our kids find impactful, just to have quality conversations with their teammates, rack mates, people that are in their class. So thank you for taking the time. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.